Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'a sunnatahu ila yawmiddin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of your weekly Islamic chat show, Guest of the Week, coming to you from Sharjah TV. I'm your host Ismail Bullock, and today in our Ramadan series of episodes, we want to talk about the parallels of life and Ramadan. And to do that with me is Ustad Muawiyah Tucker. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thanks for having me again. Alhamdulillah.
Good to have you on the show again. Now that sounds like an interesting title, Parallels of Life with Ramadan. Already I'm sure people's minds are thinking, how, when, wow.
I mean, one of the things I was thinking about when it comes to Ramadan is because sometimes, I mean, I don't want to come across as some batini kind of thing where some hidden meanings in Islam, but often we find that when we look at certain acts of worship, we find that as I've said before, many of my lectures, is that Islam is in line with the fitrah. Islam is in line with the human psychology. And Islam wants us, as in Allah said in the Quran, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. Allah wants for you ease, doesn't want for you difficulty. Allah wants for us ease in this life, doesn't want for us difficulty. So what does that mean to want ease for us? Allah wants us to have a life that is not filled with fitan, trials and tribulations, and essentially that we are able to function and operate as living organisms, doing what we are programmed to do on a molecular level even, fulfilling our desires that we have in ourselves. That's one of the really interesting things, especially when I became Muslim. I really found that was a powerful element of Islam, that Islam was literally in line of the human being, the human condition. So when it comes to Ramadan itself is, what is it? It's 30 days of fasting, abstaining from food and drink and intimacy with our families for a set period of time. What's the time? From sunrise to sunset. It's not meant as a punishment, it's not meant as a means to make us suffer. That's not the intent of Islam or intent of Ramadan, but it's a means for us to grow as individuals. As Allah mentioned in the Quran, يَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. All you believe, it's been ordained upon you fasting, just like it's been ordained upon those before you, so that hopefully you will attain taqwa. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So we can see here that the purpose of fast is the attainment of taqwa. What does taqwa mean? Taqwa is an interesting word. We as Muslims often use it, but I'm not sure if there's an English equivalent to it, to be honest. I mean, that would grasp it properly. I mean, do you have any?
I mean, usually you have to combine different words like piety, righteousness, God consciousness, awareness of the Almighty. Because it means it's a very rich meaning, isn't it?
It's a very rich meaning, and when I usually explain it, sometimes I get a bit technical, but I usually say to people that taqwa comes from the word wiqaya, which means to protect. So if you have a wiqaya, funny enough, actually, usually I mention it when I'm teaching Arabic, and I say noon and wiqaya, the noon, the letter noon, that protects the verb from a kasra. Anyway, wiqaya, a protection. So taqwa is that which protects. From what? It's almost like a shield between you and ma'asi and sins. So if a person has high taqwa, you could say he's God-fearing. I mean, he has a high level of God-fearingness. I guess that means that would. But again, you have to translate that. What does it mean to be God-fearing? I.e., you have a high level of fear of God or fear of Allah that would prevent you from sin, which I guess would be taqwa. But back to the point is, taqwa is the thing that protects you from sins, that protects you from disobeying Allah. That is taqwa. And that is hopefully Allah wants from us in the purpose of fasting Ramadan, or from the process of fasting Ramadan. So in this act, 30 days, we are building up this barrier, building up this shield, this defense against our own selves, you can almost say, against our own selves, our own nafs, in this whole process. Now, but what is it? What can we also look and see from this? There's a word we call delayed gratification. I would say that's at the core of Ramadan. So what does it mean to have delayed gratification? Like I said a minute ago, Islam is in line with the nafs. Islam is in line with the human being. Islam allows the nafs, allows the soul to indulge in that which it wants to indulge in. However, in guidelines, within boundaries, in a manner that doesn't involve harming yourself. It's almost like saying, I've manufactured a car. This is how you drive the car. You turn the wheel, your gears, your pedal. These are the things you must do. But don't do it too much that you burn out the engine or you kill the clutch. So there are things you can do with the car that you can go overboard and damage the car. Likewise with us, Allah's given us this vessel. And best believe that it is a vessel. This is, I always say to people, your body is the only car you will ever have. If someone gave you a car, this is the only car you can ever drive, you're going to look after that car. So likewise, our vessel, our body, is our vehicle throughout life. And we need to look after this. So Ramadan, delayed gratification, basically it means to allow the nafs, allow the soul to indulge in satisfying itself, but in a manner, but allowing us to also build the temperament, build the ability to do so in a controlled manner. So we can eat during Ramadan, but not the whole time. We can indulge we can drink, but at a certain time. We can indulge in intimacy with our families, but at a certain time. So we're already learning and training ourselves to do so at certain periods of time to control ourselves, and not to just do what we want when we want. And this is where it brings us back to this issue of parallels between life. If you look at Ramadan as just 30 days, you've missed the message. Ramadan is almost a template of what our life actually is. Our life is about holding back. Think about it. What does the word Sawm mean? Imsak, to hold back, to withhold, to stop. So sometimes I've even heard people say, "Oh, I can't control myself." They say this expression, "I can't control myself." Ramadan is the antidote for this, "I can't control myself." And if you think about it, literally, our body tells us you are hungry. Our body tells us you are thirsty. And you feel it, your body, you can even hear it sometimes, your belly will grumble. But you say to yourself, but wait. If this is what we're doing with our, you could say, physical functions of our body, then imagine when it comes to our interactions with others. Some may come to us, as in you could say, يَجْهَلُ عَلَيْكَ, it will come to us with attitude, swearing, making noise, and you say, إِنِّي صَائِم. You can even reinterpret that word, إِنِّي صَائِم, I'm fasting, to actually mean, I am holding myself back. You're verbalizing not only that you are fasting from food, you're actually holding yourself back from giving him what you might deserve. Maybe he deserves it, but you say, no, I'm going to hold back. I may be angry right now, I may be agitated, but I'm holding myself back. So back to the issue of parallels. So Ramadan is, I would say, the beginning of Ramadan to the end of Ramadan resembles our lives. Think about this. It resembles our lives as we traverse throughout this dunya. So let's have a look at what we do throughout Ramadan. The first 10 days, we all know this. There's the zeal, the hamas, the excitement. We're all in the masjid, every single Taraweeh, everyone gets ready. We have the first iftar, everyone gets ready, you know. So there's that extra hamas for ibadah in the first 10 days. Everyone experiences that. What happens in the next 10 days? You start seeing the masajid starts to dwindle, the numbers go down. What happens? We get distracted. You know, our norm, what we were doing before Ramadan, you know, we're busy with work or busy with other stuff. So it starts to dwindle in that the middle 10 days. But what happens in the last 10 days? the Hamas comes back again, maybe even more. Why? Because we're coming close to the ajal, close to the end. We start probably even doing more than we did in the first. That is almost our condition throughout life. If you think about our youth, our middle age, and when we are our middle part of our life, and how we are in the ends of our life, it's almost a resemblance of that. When we're young, we have the Hamas, especially when we're new Muslim. We have the Hamas. We do all the sunnahs, we do all the adhkar, we everything we do. I remember when I first became Muslim. It might sound a bit weird. Don't laugh at me, but I read that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was so humble that he didn't. His bedding was basically like it was very simple. It wasn't like how our beds are today with mattresses and whatnot. It was very simple. So I said, I'm gonna do that. So I got my covers and I started sleeping on the floor. So I'm gonna do exactly what the Messenger of Allah did. That's what I did. There was the Hamas, there was the zeal, and my mom came and said, "What are you doing?" And to her, I'm like, this guy's going mad. What's he doing? He said, now he's Muslim, now he's sleeping on the floor. What's wrong with this guy? But the point is, there's the Hamas that we all have. We want to do everything that we read the hadith, that's it, straight away. We have that, just like in Ramadan, we have that Hamas. But what happens? The shughul al-dunya, these distractions of the life, work, children, married life, complications here, death in the family, things, we get distracted. And we start waning in our tamassuk, in our application of Islam. Up until something happens in our life and we realize, but wait, I'm now 40, I'm now 50. Literally, if I was to put a date, I probably got like 10 years left. I can actually honestly say I have less life on this planet than I've had so far. And we think to ourselves, I've got to make a change before the end, which is literally what we do during Ramadan. So we see almost I know it's weird to say, it's almost like an enactment. We almost like we're subconsciously acting out our lives during these 30 days. Why? Because there's gonna come a day when it ends, when there's no more Ramadan. And the joke is, just to reinforce that parallel, that exact end isn't known. Just like Ramadan, it's interesting. Just like Ramadan, Eid. When is Eid? We don't know. We have to wait and to find out. When is our ajal? When do we die? When is the end of our lives? We don't know. We have to find out. So there's still, just like the end of Ramadan, there's that uncertainty. Just of our lives, there's that uncertainty. When is the end? I mean, it's not exactly the same because we do know that Ramadan will come 29, 30 days. We know that much. But it's still, there's a level of uncertainty when exactly Ramadan is. But we do know that when it does happen, we have Eid.
I'm going to hold you on that point there, inshallah. Keep the Eid for after the break. Join us after this short break. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Just before the break, you'd start to talk about Eid.
Yeah. So, what is Eid? Eid is a time of celebration. We get to, say, alhamdulillah, we've completed the task of Ramadan. We pray and the rest of it. But again, the topic of our discussion is the parallels between Ramadan and life. Just like throughout Ramadan, we've had the moment of abstaining from our nafs and then reward. And as Allah mentioned, I think it's Hadith Qudsi, where the ibad, the slave of Allah, has two rewards or two joys in Ramadan. No. One when he breaks his fast, one when he meets his Lord. See here this parallel. One when he breaks his fast. As we delayed, and then we get the reward at the end. So fasting, just like every single day of Ramadan is almost like our lives, Ramadan itself is almost like our lives. How so? What is another hadith? This dunya is a sijn, is a prison for the believer. What does it mean to be a prison? It means we're held back from what is outside of prison, outside of jail. A person who's in jail can't go out and enjoy the environment and do what he wants. He is held back from what he wants to do. When you come to Islam, what's unique about Islam is that you're choosing a difficult life. Now, I mean, some may say, but not really, because Islam gives us guidelines to make our lives easier, and I agree. But that's easier in the long run. But in the short term, it's difficult. I want to sleep all day. I don't want to pray and wake up for Fajr. I want to sleep throughout the day until half the day. I want to do what I want to do. I have to stop what I want to do and do what I'm told to do. I have to hold back my nafs. Like I just said, Ramadan's about imsak. Ramadan's about holding back what you want to do and doing what you are told to do. Every day, you wake up for suhoor, and suhoor is early. I mean, what time is suhoor time in UAE normally?
Probably something around just before 5. It really depends. Could be 4:30, 4:40, 4:20.
I guess, is it as early as 4:20?
Can get, I guess. But again, you caught me off.
Yeah.
Put me on the spot.
I mean,
something along those lines.
So in UK, for example, where I'm from, during summertime, Fajr begins as early as 2:40, which is the time when nautical twilight begins. 2:40 is the earliest Fajr can get. So that means, and Taraweeh might finish at midnight. So that's literally about a couple hours between praying and coming out from the masjid and waking up again for suhoor. So we're preparing ourselves, getting ourselves ready to hold back for the whole day, to restrain ourselves the whole day. Why are we doing so? Because we want the reward of iftar. That's life. Throughout our lives, we are holding back from arguing. We are holding back from useless debates. We're holding back from violence even. We're holding back from so many things that we may want to engage in life. Why? We want the reward in the hereafter. This reward in the hereafter, just like the reward for iftar, and just like the reward for Eid. Eid is the big reward. That's the reward for the whole 30 days. But there's also small rewards. Every day we get a small win, and that's a beautiful habit to form as a Muslim. And that's the power of Ramadan actually, especially for the children. We're teaching the children that with every effort of holding back your nafs, there's reward. Every time you struggle against yourself, there's happiness, there's a reward behind that. That's a powerful message to teach your children. And sometimes people say they think of their child as fasting and whatnot. They think, oh, that's so, I feel sorry for them, miskeen, they're hungry. You shouldn't feel sorry for them. This is a powerful thing. It's almost like saying this person is weightlifting, lifting heavy weights, struggling, sweating. I feel sorry for him, miskeen. Why feel sorry for him? His reward is his muscles that he's getting, the physique he's looking for. Even like running, jogging. I mean, literally, you're sweating, you're panting, and you go and do it every day for 30 minutes. Why would you do that to yourself? Because there's a reward at the end of it. And that's one of the most powerful things about Islam, is that Islam, like I said, is in line with the nafs. It's teaching us that life itself, from the moment you're born to the moment you die, is a collection of struggles. Innama al-usri yusran. That is life. But not everyone is used to that struggle. It's not a surprise that across the globe, but this is a fact. This is not Muslims spreading propaganda. This is something attested to by non-Muslims as well as Muslims. That across the globe, Muslims have the lowest rates of suicide, the lowest rates of mental health issues related to stress and whatnot, and depression. And they have the lowest issues related to these things. Why? Because we have in ourselves, those who obviously practice Islam, you can almost say it, daily, a weekly, a monthly, a lifestyle of struggle against difficulties because we understand and recognize that there's reward at the end of it. So back to the issue of this iftar saying of Eid. Just like I said, every day is almost like a mini life with Qiyamah, you could say. We have a whole time of struggle and then reward at the end, and reward at the end. Ramadan itself is almost like a struggle for a whole month and then reward at the end. Like our lives is a struggle from when we're born and then a reward at the end. These subliminal messages, and I know it sounds like a negative connotation, that subliminal message, but this subconscious message teaches every Muslim that struggle is intended in part of life. This dunya is not made to be easy. It's made to be difficult. And Ramadan is an example of it, that exactly. It's a time of struggle, hold back, there will be a reward. And Eid, let's look at the reality of Eid. We get ready. What do? Put on our clothes, fresh new clothes, have a nice new shower, put on the atar, make our way to the masalla, hear the khutbah, give the taqbil, the qubla to those around us, visit friends and family and whatnot. Doesn't that remind you of Qiyamah? Where when we die, what happens? We are washed. Atar is placed on us. We are wrapped in our kafan, our new clothing. That is actually going to be our new clothing. Everyone, no matter what clothes you wear in this dunya, you will wear a new piece of clothing one day, which will be your final clothing, where you'll be placed in your grave, which is the beginning of your Qiyamah. And when the Qiyamah happens, what's next? Mahshar, where everyone is resurrected together, all the collective. Everyone will be there to be judged. Just like on the Eid, we all come together as a collection. So you can almost say that the Eid is almost like a sample. It's almost like a small sample of what it would be like on Eid. Now, obviously, in Muslim countries, that message is more profound, because it's like, I remember doing Eid in Masjid Nabawi, it's like a sea of people, or in the Haram Mecca, it's like an ocean of heads moving around. Can you imagine Yawm al-Qiyamah? You're one of billions of human beings throughout history walking around, and everyone there will be judged. Likewise in Eid. So in London it's a bit smaller than that, but it's still, we have, sometimes we organise Eid in the park. We get together like in Birmingham or whatnot. They get together like a couple, tens of thousands of people get together and do Eid. But again, the symbolism. We struggled for 30 days. Now we come to this gathering of new clothes, of new atar, this new lifestyle. And obviously there's a reward. There's the food and the enjoyment after that gathering. Listen carefully. After the gathering, after the judgment, what do we have after that? The food and the enjoyment with our families and our friends. We visit those we haven't seen for a while. Just like on Qiyamah. Maybe there'll be someone you might have passed. Maybe someone you gave da'wah to years ago. You lost contact with them. Imagine the day of judgment. Imagine in Jannah. It's like, bruv, you here as well? MashaAllah, you here as well? We made it. The same kind of feeling you get, that reward. It's almost like Eid is that smaller sample of what to look forward to. And that's actually an amazing thing to think about as a yearly reminder. Like I said, human beings need that dhikr, need that constant reminder of the promise of what's to come. And I think it's an amazing thing to think about. I mean, I never had Eid in UAE. I've only done it in Saudi. I mean, can you give us some explanation? I mean, how was it in UAE? The vibe.
I mean, I guess overall, there are some similarities. Of course, we go to the Musalla, which is outside as well.
Yeah. So
you see different people, many different nationalities, wherever you are really, because we know that it's a melting pot here. So you get to see different nationalities, so that's nice as well. And of course, a lot of people who spend their time after that is going to visit families.
Yeah.
Family, maybe you haven't seen some family members for a while. So that's the general vibe here, is greeting people and going to see friends and family, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's just generally the traditions across Muslim countries, is that family unit. I think that is one of the most profound things about Islam that, alhamdulillah, by the permission and grace of Allah, Allah has allowed us to maintain that throughout the ages. Even look at the other ummah before us, it's been slowly eroded away, but for Muslims, we've maintained the family structure. And these are one of the things that allows us to maintain the family ties and the social cohesion. We have these moments where we get to see what we are all struggling for. We are all in the struggle together. We all pray Qiyamul Layl together. We all pray in Jama'ah together. We're all fasting together. We're all in this as a social collective struggle. All of us together are struggling together, trying to attain that final reward. To the point whereby even when we might see someone who slips, we remind them, brother, don't slip. I remember, I think it was in Medina, near the Sabco bus station. Something happened. Two people got into an argument, and the usual, the slippers come off and they want to start fighting, and then a swarm of people came round, obviously to stop the fight, because I'm about more for ordering the good, forbidding the evil. But what was most profound for me, what I saw there, wasn't the fact that they came to stop the fight, which is obviously profound in and of itself. Cause I know in where I'm from, in the UK, people don't stop fights, and probably for good reasons. But everyone came to stop fight. But what I heard so loud and resonated in my soul was I heard some people say, "Salli ala Nabi, Salli ala Nabi," as in they're trying to tell the person, do dhikr, send salam upon the Messenger of Allah, do acts of worship. They are reminding them of righteousness, because they understand that the cure for wickedness, or the cure for these kind of things, is righteousness. And these people who are saying this were saying this to strangers. They don't know who they are, but they're still reminding each other of righteousness.
Hold on that point, good time to go for a break. Join us after this short break. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Now, just before the break, you mentioned that scenario of those people getting into an argument, and how the fact that at the end of the day, the people around them, what was more profound than splitting them up or stopping the fight was the fact that they were reminding them to make dhikr of Allah.
Yeah, and that's one of the. It's hard to say. I mean, because obviously I was raised a Christian, and I was even sent to a Christian school. I wasn't in UK, schools are not religious at all. They're just, I guess you could say they're secular. They're irreligious. They don't teach you to be righteous or not to be righteous. They're just not involved. But specifically, I was sent to a Christian school. So every morning, we would have the morning worship with tambourines and the singing and the rest of it in the morning. So that was in the school. It was amazing. Like from 9 to 9:30, they would have a sermon, and then they'll get to school. So that's how I was raised. But when coming to Islam, what was most profound for me was the in-depth weaving of the lifestyle of Islam into everything we do. And I always say this, that when we say Islam is a way of life, it's hard to, as in for those who are non-Muslims watching this, maybe if you won't be listening to what I'm saying, it's hard to explain that until you've actually lived that. When you say it's a way of life, it's not just a list of codes you follow if there's an argument and go to court. No. It's literally a way of life. And there's no better example of that in the expression than when the Sahaba said that Allah's Messenger taught us everything, even how to use the bathroom. That's one of the most amazing things about Islam, that even when it comes to something we have to do almost every day, Islam gives us a way in which we can do so that still allows us to remember Allah. Now obviously, we don't do dhikr when we're on the bathroom, but we do dhikr before we enter the room, do dhikr when we leave in the room, and even, what does dhikr mean? We're bringing that remembrance into our minds, into our forefront. We remind ourselves that Allah is aware of us, is watching us, seeing what we do. Be aware of what you do. Be cautious of how you act and how you traverse. And it's interesting, and I think this is probably one of the reasons why you find that Muslims as a whole on the globe tend to be most law-abiding, because we are not just looking out for the government, looking at us doing wrong and punishing us. We're also looking out for Allah, seeing what we're doing and punishing. We have an awareness of our actions that transcends just getting a fine for speeding. It's also, you could say, a metaphorical fine Yawm al-Qiyamah for sins we may do. Which brings us back to the last points I want to bring regards to the similarity between Ramadan and our lives, is that as we get close to the end of Ramadan, we start preparing. I'm not sure if anyone recognises this. When it's the last couple of nights of Ramadan, we're not sure when it is, but we start doing the shopping. If we get the food shopping ready, the visits to the supermarket get so frequent. Why are we doing that? We're preparing for that moment, getting ready before it's too late. And the worst thing is, I'm sure everyone knows this, when we hear that it's 29 nights, not 30, you're like, oh no. You rush quickly because you realize you ain't got that extra day you thought you might have. Just like in life, when we get near to ends of our life, we start to rush to do before our time comes to an end. Even, subhanAllah, those who, I'm not sure if you can call it a blessing. Sometimes it's a blessing, sometimes it's not. When we are told, some people might be told that they have a certain number of days or months or weeks to live. Those people, again, I don't know if it's a blessing or not, because if you were told literally a time period, we are told you will die soon. We all know this consciously, but subconsciously, we kind of think we will live forever. In a way, the way we behave at least, it's like we'll live forever, because we don't act as though we're going to die next week. We may die next week, but don't act that way. But if I said to you, actually you will die next week, you've got your kidneys have failed, something's not right, you literally just wrap up your affairs. That is an opportunity to it's almost like you've been given a head start. Anyway, so in Ramadan we make our mad rush to get all the things that we need to do, prepare for that moment where it's the final salah, the final qiyam al-layl, when it does the khatam, it finishes the juz' amma, try and finish up the Ramadan, finish up the Quran in the Taraweeh. So likewise in life, we try to wrap up our debts, make sure our debts are wrapped up, make sure our will has been made, has been settled. And we find even in our practice, every single year, without doubt, I get messages from people saying, brother, how do you pay zakah? Because many people think that zakah is paid during Ramadan.
Yeah.
It's not paid during Ramadan. But zakah is paid a year after, when you went over the nisab, or the minimum limit. For those who don't know what nisab means, when you have wealth, there's a threshold that if you have wealth above that threshold, then you start counting a year from that moment. So if you had no money today, and then next week or tomorrow you had £1 million, you're now over that threshold, but you don't pay zakah until you maintain that wealth for a whole year. But many people think that Ramadan's the time to do your zakah. And some even put their Ramadan as a time to pay zakah, which you shouldn't do. Let me explain what I mean by that. You shouldn't do that if it's not the time. Meaning that if Ramadan is in Shawwal and you paid it in Ramadan, that's fine. You could do taqdeem, you've paid it early. But what that still means though is that if you've increased in wealth, when you should pay, you need to make up that difference. So it's very important nuance. If you do pay your zakah early, because you want to somehow get the virtue of Ramadan, I favor the viewpoint of paying your zakah when you should pay zakah, because there's poor people throughout the year, not just Ramadan. But if you do want to bring it forward during Ramadan, then you still need to be aware that when it is due, you need to make up the shortfall if your wealth has increased. And if it's decreased, then it's not a problem. Then the rest is sadaqah. So we try and fix our affairs, our monetary affairs, and people try to pay their Ramadan, their zakat during Ramadan time as well. Zakat al-fitr as well. We try and get that food out to people before the end and whatnot. So we try and get ourselves ready for the end, just like in our lives. And we should also make sure that as we look to this parallel between Ramadan and our lives, that we also make sure that in our own preparation in our lives, that we have certain things in place. Number one is our will. Make sure our wills are set and ready. Why? Having a will ready and stipulated is a conscious decision and recognition of our ajal. I mean, I know it's a bit of a hypocrite saying this because I haven't done my will yet. I mean, not formally, meaning that we all have an idea of what we want to do, but especially for those in non-Muslim countries. For Muslim countries, I think it's different because I'm sure, like in here in UAE, if you passed away, if you never had a will done, your inheritance is still intact. How your wealth is distributed in UAE or in Saudi Arabia or other countries is according to how it should be done in Islam anyway. And I even remember someone saying on these YouTube videos about migrating to or immigrating to UAE, they mentioned for non-Muslims to get the will done, because if you don't have your will done, then they will apply your stuff according to Islamic law. So if you don't want it to be done that way, you have to make it clear as a non-Muslim. So, but in non-Muslim lands, we can't lean upon that. We can't depend on, well, if I haven't got a will done, at least my inheritance will be done as it. You don't have that virtue. You have to stipulate how your wealth is distributed, because the government's not going to give you or distribute your wealth according to the Sharia. They don't apply the Sharia over there. So for Muslims in non-Muslim lands, a will is not just about the inheritance. It's about actually making, what's the word? It's you could say your way of enforcing the Islamic rules of inheritance on your person. So as everyone knows, for those who don't know, in Islam there's two parts of inheritance. There is that which Islam dictates, as in your wife gets a certain portion, your kids get a certain portion, your parents get a certain portion. Islam dictates how much that is. But Islam allows you also to stipulate where a third of your wealth can go. So you can say, I want a third of my wealth to go to this charity when I die. That's called a wasiyah. That's what we will call in Islamically a will. Now, in the Western countries, a will is just whatever. Everything is a will. Whatever you say to do with your wealth. You can say, all my money goes towards a cat or a dog or whatnot. You can do that stuff. But in Islam, you have the irth, the inheritance, that's one thing. And you have a will, that's something else. What I'm trying to say here is that in Islam, if you live in a non-Muslim country, that Islamic part, the 2/3 that has to happen, doesn't necessarily happen. You have to make it happen. You have to actually write a will and stipulate that if I die, the X amount goes to my child, X amount goes to my wife, according to Islam. You have to write that and put it in writing so that when you do die, you can take it to the government and say, look, this person, they decided this happens to their wealth. You can't just say, oh, they're Muslim, therefore this is how it happens. No, you have to stipulate and have your will ready. So just like when we have to prepare ourselves for the end of Ramadan, one of the things we have to also prepare ourselves in our lives is having our will written, established, and attested. That's a very important thing in the West. It's not just in the law of Western countries. It's not enough to just write on a piece of paper and sign. You have to actually get attested. Go to a lawyer, a legal professional, and he will stamp it. Say we attest that this person gave this instruction. And one brother, mashallah, he gave a lecture in our center about the wills because he's a lawyer. He said a very important statement. He said, your will is your speech when you can't speak anymore. And that includes even things like your children. Where will your children be? We hear so many times, and it's very unfortunate, Muslims, as in they were raised non-Muslim, they accepted Islam, but then they passed away. And they never said, I must be buried in a Muslim graveyard. I must be covered as a kafan. They assumed it would happen. But when they passed away, and their families inherited their body, you could say, and their families weren't Muslim, things happen differently. So how you want to be buried and how you want your wealth to be distributed isn't an obvious thing like it is in a Muslim country. So it has to be stipulated. You have to make yourself prepared for it. And one last thing before that would be your debts. I'm very strict about debts. I'm always going on people about debts. Debts is not something we should be complacent on. The sheer fact that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam refused to pray behind a companion because he died and hadn't settled his debts is enough as a reminder that debts is not something you should take lightly. Because number one, debts are not inherited. Meaning that if I died with £10,000 of debt to X and have no assets to settle that debt, it doesn't go on to my children. You don't inherit debts. So that has to be dealt with Yawm al-Qiyamah. And the last thing you want to deal with Yawm al-Qiyamah is handing over your good deeds to settle something you could have settled in this life. So anyway, that's a nice little reminder, as we can draw parallels between Ramadan and our lives. And hopefully, inshallah, when we complete our Ramadan, this Ramadan, here we are now, that we can take this reminder, learn from it, and grow and become better Muslims as a result of it.
Sure, Jazakallah khair. And also for the viewers for tuning in, inshallah, join us at the same time, the same place. Inshallah, as always, I leave you with the greetings of Islam, the greetings of peace. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.